Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Welcome everyone to the August 21st, 2024 Police and Fire Commission meeting. And the first item of order is the call to order. And second is Pledge of Allegiance. If you could rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is approval of minutes from the July 17th, 2024 meeting. Those were included in the packet, pages 3, 4, and 5 of the packet. Any comments? One thing I noticed is, Commissioner Russell, I think you were by video that day, and I think Sarah noted that on the motions to go into open session. I thought it might be good just to note that you were not in the closed session as well, so maybe we could add that at the top of page 4 and then at the top of page 5 of the packet, just to note that you weren't participating. So I would, I guess, move to amend the agenda to add that Commissioner Russell was not in the closed sessions.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None? And then any other comments or suggestions for the minutes?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes from July 17th, 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Agenda item number 4 is public appearances for non-agenda items. We have 2 and a number of folks in the crowd. We'll start with Colleen Chase, who wishes to speak.
Hi, I'm Colleen Chase. I've spoken to many of you in the past, but I'm here to recognize the efforts and commitment to organizing an amazing community gathering last week at the successful community night out. Sergeant Brown deserves credit for the incredible event planning. It's as if this is another job that he is very good at. It resulted in an event that celebrated Fitchburg as one community, and it's really the only occasion that I'm aware of in Fitchburg that does just that, celebrate us as one community. I also want to express my appreciation for the extraordinary bravery of the police department responding to the recent domestic violence situation. When others run away, police officers run in to help. My thoughts are with those impacted. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Colleen. And the other item we have is registration to say, wish to thank Chief Morales and all the Fitchburg officers for their involvement in the community night out on August 14th. Great to have the officers interacting with the community and such a positive event. So thank you, Stephanie East, for that comment and registration. Any other comments for the public appearances section? Okay, then we'll move to agenda item number 5. We are honored to have the mayor and city administrator join us to share some updates. Please.
So hello, everyone. I don't know, do you want to start? Okay, so we are here because we have a couple of things that we want to update you and share with you. So the couple of things is an update about the fire chief recruitment process. We want to talk about the possible referendum. And also an update on where we are with the police facility. So I will start with the police facility. We are, as you know, the council approved the $35 million. And in the capital budget that just was approved 2 weeks ago, maybe, by the council, we added another $5 million to cover the feasibility component of the building. Council approved that. And last council meeting, the council approved additional funds to cover for the architect fee for the revision of the schematic design that is on the, is currently are working on that. And also there is an internal group of people that they meet. It's weekly, bi-weekly.
Usually weekly on just a check-in, and then more detailed meetings can be held, or longer meetings can be held bi-weekly or as needed. Yeah, so we have a group of people that are meeting weekly or bi-weekly. There is a council member that is also attending those meetings, Jim Wheeler, Alder Wheeler, and so he can also provide an update to the council. So this is the thing that we are working with the police as a facility. I think this is coming along. I hope that we can, the schematic design will be done, in a couple of months. It's going to take, 6 months at least? And then we can start with the bidding process. So I hope that with the bidding process can start in next year. I don't know when. Maybe it could be spring, summer, or my ideal is to target by April, but we'll see. We will see.
So that one is good news. So everything is working. It's going to be, the facility is going to be around 53,000 square feet from the 78,000 that was originally proposed. And then the other topic is, as you know, the council has been working for almost a year, determining if we need to go to a referendum or not, and we there is a consensus on the council that we should go to a referendum. The council already informally decided for the amount. It's going to be approved in our next council meeting is August 27. And the idea with the referendum is to cover, we don't need a referendum because we have a deficit. We need a referendum because we need to maintain and provide more services, and also we need more people because of our growth. So that referendum will cover 5 officers, 3 community officers, a lieutenant, and a sergeant, or detective. Well, I'm confused.
They would be assigned to the detective bureau, I believe.
Okay, but there are like 5, and then also we are planning to. There are 6 firefighters, and the referendum will cover the operational cost of maintaining the facility. The cost of the facility will be around $475,000 a year. So, as you know, it's a high price tag, and this is what is also going to cover, the referendum. Plus, some internal position that we need. Another portion is going to be allocated to transit, and then for operational cost. But the majority of the referendum is, I would say, a big chunk of the referendum is going to public safety.
So I don't know, do you want to add more?
Yeah, I can just add that, as the mayor's indicated, this has been a conversation that's been happening between staff and common council members for the last 14 months, since June of last year, through various public meetings, committees of the whole, and common council meetings to ultimately refine what is to potentially be included in the referendum that, as the mayor mentioned, will be acted upon at the common council meeting on Tuesday, the 27th. As the mayor mentioned, there are about 14 positions that are included in the resolution that the council will look at. She mentioned the 11 public safety positions already. There are 3 staff positions that would be assigned in City Hall, 1 in the Finance Department, 1 in the Human Resources Department, and a newly created communications position to help better facilitate communications within the city government and its residents and stakeholders. And then again, as the mayor mentioned, there are operating costs within the referendum for the new police services facility, which we are currently estimating at around $475,000 to $500,000 a year. What that would cover is the cost of 1 full-time building maintenance person, as well as other operating costs associated with utilities, insurance, any repairs that might be necessary to equipment within the building, or HVAC systems, and then also setting a little bit of money aside annually so that when systems do need to be replaced within that building, there's funding available to do that. And then the 2 other pieces of that referendum, again, as the mayor had mentioned, were some additional funding for transit to improve our transit system here within the community, and then also a small amount of money for ongoing operational costs associated with inflationary pressures. So you'll see more information if the council ultimately acts to approve this referendum on Tuesday through a number of informational sessions that will be scheduled in September and October, where the community will learn more about what's included in the referendum and the why behind it. And as the mayor again mentioned, we're not at a referendum stage to fill a budget gap. We're at a referendum stage because there's continuing demand for city services to be maintained at existing levels, and we don't have the staff capacity to maintain those service levels, largely in response to the growth of the community.
Did we mention the amount is going to be $3.6 million?
Right.
I forgot to add that.
Yep.
Yes, I forgot to say something. But, okay.
Any thoughts or questions from commission members? And thank you for the overview. That's really helpful.
Yes, thank you for the overview. One question, and maybe I missed this. In terms of the maintenance costs for the new facility, how many years are we estimating will be in the referendum?
For the referendum?
Yeah,
that would be a recurring, ongoing.
Ongoing.
Yep. So it's a one-time increase in property taxes, but that one-time increase continues on forever.
And also the city has hired a Mueller Communication. They are behind this process, and they are helping us and assisting with all the, this process of the phases of the referendum. So if the council approve this referendum resolution next week, we are starting with phase 3, and phase 3 is the outreach to the resident, explaining why do we need to do this, the reasons, and also how much, how to, and to have these meetings with the resident too.
Yeah, we'll be looking at, I believe, 7 outreach sessions. 4 will be in person. The plan is to have 1 in each aldermanic district in the community, and then 3 of them will be virtual options where folks can attend virtually and get the information and ask questions and those sorts of things.
Do I understand you right by saying the public input piece is going to happen after the council already approves what the referendum amount is and what it's for? Is that right?
No. So we put out a media release, I think 2 weeks ago, that public input on the referendum could be provided at the Common Council meeting on August 13th and again on August 27th. So if there is anybody from the public who would like to provide feedback to our elected officials, you can do that in person on August 27th at the Common Council meeting at 7:30 p.m. Obviously, you can also do that testimony via Zoom. We do allow that. And then, of course, you can contact your elected officials via email as well and share any comment that maybe you would wish to share.
But the other thing I want to mention, maybe to clarify, also we already gathered and collect some input from the residents through the survey. Mm-hmm. I don't know, you got the survey to ask you a couple of questions and ask you in that survey, how do you feel about if we have to allocate the fund, how to allocate the fund in the referendum. So that one was done at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, right in, I think, February, March timeframe.
Yeah.
There was a paper copy of a survey was sent to all residential addresses within the city.
Just to be clear, those 7 public outreach sessions you just mentioned are going to happen after August 27th, when you expect to approve the referendum?
Yes,
okay.
correct.
Yeah, those are informational sessions. Obviously, that's would be in response to the Common Council taking action based upon, again, the 14 months of continued conversation and solicitation of input.
Other thoughts or questions?
So I have a question about the facility. Thanks for the update. Would you say that the approved amount, you mentioned the funding amount and the size of the facility, would you say that aligns with the professional opinions we've gotten from all the studies we paid for over the last 4 or 5 years?
No. Huh?
I said, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, I would say, I say no, but this is what the council, decided to go in February with that, with the size of the budget, I would say. And the budget that the council approved at the moment didn't include the training room or whatever facility or the shooting range. So no, I would say no. It's a smaller than was original plan. Yes, for sure.
How about the police department? Are they in favor of the approved plan as you've presented it, 53,000 square feet in the budget? I presume they're in favor of that too, right? We're moving forward with it.
Well, I would say that my conversation with Chief Morales, he is not happy with the reduction, of the building, but I think $53,000, compared to what they have right now, $17,000 to go to $53,000, is a significantly bigger building, it's going to be new, modern, and so I will say that this, from my point of view, I will expect that the police department are happy with to move to a new place.
How many years do you think we can support that facility before we're outgrowing it, like we are today with the current facility? Have you looked at that?
Okay.
I think it's a little bit challenging to answer that one, largely because schematic design hasn't been done on the reduced facility size. I think once we get a good look at what the schematic design has with all of the particular areas of the facility laid out, we'll have a better understanding of what the current capacity is as designed and what the PD may anticipate for growth in those particular areas, and that will be helpful. The intent is that areas that can be that are not as easy to add on to in the future, you're thinking like evidence processing, evidence storage, there could be other, lab spaces and those sorts of things that are a bit more challenging to upsize those to meet a longer demand period, so to speak, now, and other areas that could be more easily added on to, thinking of like command staff office space in the future, to design the facility in such a way that would allow that to happen more easily. Of course, there could always be a conversation at whatever time that comes in the future that maybe the city would like to consider a district model as well, and maybe look at facilities elsewhere in the community and keep this as more of the kind of the headquarters, so to speak. And then from a facility size perspective, how we've landed on the 53,000 square feet is in consultation with our architectural design firm and our construction management firm that have both been contracted by the city. They've obviously looked at what the construction costs and materials estimates are at this point in time, and have identified with the funding that's available that would be approximately 53,000 square feet is what the budget will allow.
But that's not what they recommended, just to be clear. They're backing into it based on the budget they were presented?
Yes, that is an accurate statement, and the document that you're referencing, I suspect, is the space needs study that was conducted in 2014 that identified, somewhere in the neck of the woods of 70,000 to 75,000 square feet as the recommended size.
But one of the design that the Chief Morales showed me last week, it has potential for expansion. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? One question about the referendum is the plan to have one question that is either voted up or down, or are you planning to break it out into different questions based on services?
Only one question.
We don't have the statutory authority to break it out. We can only do one question.
Okay. And then if the referendum does not pass, where does the operating cost for the facility come from?
We are looking at other options.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you very much.
No, we need to
do the other.
Do you want to do the fire chief stuff? Yeah. I mean, we could leave if you'd like, but... You want me to cover that?
Yeah, you can start.
So in regards to the fire chief process, obviously we have interim Chief Grossen serving in that role. I think this is his third time serving as an interim fire chief. So we're fortunate that he has experience in this role and obviously familiarity with the city and its processes. So we're certainly in a good spot under his interim leadership right now, which does afford us the opportunity to take a look at this position, as we do any position when a department head level, or quite honestly, really any position in the city becomes available. We always take a look at that position and determine, are the duties and responsibilities still current and appropriate? Do they need to be updated? Is this a position we still need? And those sorts of things. Obviously, in the case of a fire chief, we know we still need this position, and we have every intention of recommending a process to begin. But it made sense to take a pause right now, and at the same time that former fire chief Pulvermacher was leaving, coincidentally, a conversation was brought to the city of Fitchburg via the city of Verona in regards to long-term EMS service provision. So there have been ongoing conversations between the two cities in regards to what long-term EMS service provision looks like. And in fact, the Verona Common Council had a brief conversation about it back at one of their meetings in July, where they would like to open up the terms of the intergovernmental agreement related to the current service and potentially have further conversations about the long-term service. We are having a conversation with our Common Council at the Committee of the Whole meeting next week on August 28th, Wednesday night, where we'll provide an update to our Common Council on how we got to this conversation, where we're currently at, and what our potential options might be for long-term EMS service provision. I will say, and I'll mention it again at our meeting on the 28th, that we are very fortunate to have high-quality EMS service in our community that is provided by Fitch-Verona, as well as excellent leadership there as well. So we're fortunate to be having this conversation in light of good EMS service versus in spite of poor EMS service. So hopefully these decisions can be made on how best to proceed without any sort of situation that was a negative impact in our community driving those conversations. So what we anticipate, obviously, we've had conversations with Interim Chief Grossen. He is looped in on all of this. He is comfortable with where things are sitting right now. We would anticipate a request to the Police and Fire Commission forthcoming probably in January of 2025 that would begin the hiring process of a fire chief. Our intent is to ensure that we have the best information available when that process starts. We don't, for instance, want to start a fire chief process under conversations that it's going to be status quo, and there's no talk about potentially changing the arrangement with EMS. So we want to make sure that when that process starts, the information is out there, i.e. we are staying status quo, or in 5 years, for instance, there's going to be a new arrangement explored for or implemented for EMS service. We felt that was only fair for any of the applicants that would be in the fire chief process to know exactly what they're applying for. And we anticipate that we'll have that direction. Some insight should be shared next week from our Common Council on what they would like staff to work on. And based upon that direction, we would anticipate that by early next year, we'll be able to have the direction nailed down, so to speak, and be able to communicate that to anybody through that process. So I would anticipate for this body that you'll see a request forthcoming in January of 25 to begin that process. And then as we typically do, Sarah Olson, our Human Resources Director, will work with you to develop that process and the timeline and so forth.
Question?
Any questions or comments from the commission on the timeline?
Well, I think based on what you're saying, the development of the timeline rests with Sarah and the commission. So there's no estimate right now or an ideal length of time you're thinking you'd like to see the position filled in.
Well, I think internally from our conversations, we would like to have the position filled by next summer. You know, it's certainly midsummer, July 1st, I think seems to be a reasonable target to ensure that that's filled by then.
Thank you.
Would you say the interim status, I mean, that'll be almost a year plus of an interim chief. Is that typical in these sorts of things, would you say?
It depends. I know interim Chief Grossen has been in an interim role over a year in the past. I think in most situations, probably not. Most municipalities probably tend to move on things a little bit quicker, but I think obviously our situation is a little unique right now with this conversation about long-term EMS service. And again, just not creating a bait and switch kind of situation for any of the fire chief applicants, that they're stepping into something that isn't known right now.
And Chief Grossen is, grateful. He's okay. He's fine. And as a mayor, I'm very confident on him. This is why we decided to take this slow, because we need to determine what is the outcome of our conversation with the council and the next step. So we don't want to rush this. We want to do things right. And I am very confident that Chief is doing a great job in the fire department, and I feel confident. So this is what we are taking the time to do things right, because hiring a new chief is an important task that you will take. We are hiring for long term, so we need to be careful that we need to be sure that the person that we hire knows where it's coming to, what type of department it's going to come to.
And as I mentioned, we've had conversations with interim Chief Grossen on this timeline, and he's comfortable with it as well. So we were definitely cognizant of that, because we didn't want to create a situation where somebody is sitting in limbo in an interim role for an extended period of time. It's not necessarily, it can create problems for that person. It can create problems within the organization. It can create problems within the city and the community without that certainty. But again, since Chad has been in this role previously, he's been with the department a long time, and we've, again, had open and frank conversations with him about the timeline, and he's comfortable with it, that we feel we're okay to stay on this timeline.
The only other comment I'll make, and from experience, sometimes, not saying this would be the case, but when there is change afoot, like you're talking about, and the new leader is going to be the long-term leader, as you just said, Mayor, they may want to have a part in that. And I think that could be just for your own consideration as we're going through this. If there is major change on the horizon, a new chief may want some say, or may be excited, actually, about building something new and exciting.
Right.
That may attract a different candidate, perhaps. So just something to consider.
This
Thank you.
makes sense,
and I'm not familiar enough with the EMS, Fitchburg EMS, but is the potential for that to move, the EMS services to move to the Fitchburg Fire Department? Or is it that more of the Fitchburg Fire EMS services will move toward the Fitchburg EMS entity?
I think those are two options that you'll hear about next week, and ultimately it will be up to the Common Council to kind of provide direction, but provide direction and feedback to staff to say, explore these two options or focus your time on this option. We feel that this is the better of the two, but those certainly are two of the options that will be presented next week to the Common Council to consider.
Okay.
But the other thing that we want to mention is that Verona is looking at the current formula, so that they started the conversation. They are looking at, if we need to change the formula, it means that the city of Fitchburg will need to, allocate more funding to the budget. And so this is why we need to rethink what is going to be our role if this is going to happen.
There's a funding imbalance between the relation of calls for service and the funding formula, which is based upon equalized value. Fitchburg, the city of Fitchburg has about 2/3 of the calls for service and pays just over, I think it's about 55% for the service as a whole. The city of Verona, I think, has about 25% of the calls for service and pays about 40% of the service. So we knew this conversation was going to happen at some point in time. It was just a matter of not if, but when. And the when has arrived. So, one of the things that we will probably be looking at, again, awaiting council direction next week, is an update to that intergovernmental agreement. I mean, we want to be a good partner. I mean, obviously, if the shoe was on the other foot, when we were asking, Verona to pay their fair share, so to speak, we would want them to come to the table, and we're going to do that, assuming the council's supportive of that.
I'll just finish that. I'm doing all the talking. I'm sorry, but we don't get to see you very often, so it's so nice. Thank you again for being here, and don't be a stranger. Come anytime.
You can invite me anytime. So
I like to think about our role here as far as the police and fire service is recruiting, training, retaining, discipline of our wonderful staff. And in that regard, it's important for you to hear from us, I think, how important things like facility and staffing and staff wellness are to our efforts. It's very competitive, municipally, it's very competitive. And those things matter. Those things are really, there's a bright line between how well we can do what we do with those sorts of things in this city to help us recruit, retain, develop, and ultimately keep them well in our services. So thank you again for being here, and look forward to seeing you again.
And this is very important for me as a mayor is, if I look at the police department, composition, is, we have a very young force. And that the other thing that for me is very important is how well that this force is trained, you know what I mean? So this is our thing that I am still thinking about the future, how we can eventually look at training and all of that in future budget, capital budget, because it's, as you mentioned, we need to retain. We have this young force now. I was looking today at the budget. We have a budget today meeting with the chief, and I was looking at the date that every officer started. Oh my Lord! I say 21, 22, 23, 24. It was like, let's say, wow, So we have the opportunity because we have a young force, that we can mold, to our value, culture, in the police department. But also we have a responsibility with this force to train them well, and to provide the tool and resources that they need to be, to do a good job in our community. So that we are seeing that, maybe I don't say publicly, but I think a lot about that. And I also am very comfortable talking to the chief about, the command that we have right now in the police with Andrew, Ned, and Matt. We have a good group of command, future leaders of the department, that they did a career in our, they started from when you were officer and they moved to the the ranks. So that one it gave me hopes that maybe this new officer that we are hiring, they will stay, in the city and the police department for the long time. But, we never know because we are dealing with a different generation that where they like to, every 2-3 years we move. But the idea is how to retain because it costs so much money to hire them, and then you train them well and then they leave, and how we can retain. So this is why it's important that in the referendum. Also, another part of them, as Chad mentioned, is the operational. We need to have some allocation for operational costs, also for to adjust salary by inflation and all of that too. To have that contingency in the budget, to do that. Because we know that we are competing with other police department in the county for talent. So that one is a priority for me, to think forward about how we can retain, this group of people that we have right now. So finally, I want to say that I want to congratulate also the police department. I also sent an email to all of you the day after, congratulating the police department for the community out event. It was a great event. I received a lot of compliments for residents. It's good, and also I will recognize Sergeant Logan in the next council meeting with a certificate, and it's ready to go. So because I see that Sergeant Logan has been doing this for a couple of years, and this event is growing and growing, and it's becoming more like the community event that the city. We don't have one. We don't have the Verona Festival or Verona Days. We don't have that, and this event that has become that event for the whole community. So I want to say thank you because I think most of the police department was involved in that, also organizing. So. Any questions?
Brett, any last questions or comments? Okay. Thanks again for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's move to agenda item number 6, report from Police Department. And we've got new faces with us today. If you guys wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves, and then love to hear the reports.
Hello, everybody. Andrew McCarthy, captain downstairs of the police department, filling in for Chief Morales tonight.
Hello, everybody. Mark Malakish, division chief with the fire department, pinch hitting for interim Chief Grossen, who's on vacation.
Moving into the staffing reports, the first one I have in the packet here is the sworn staffing summary. Not a whole lot of change from last month's summary. We went from 4 vacancies down to 3. Still some very similar numbers in the field training and law enforcement academy columns. The only change that I'm recognizing from the publication of this document is going to be the leave and restricted duty. There's one additional staff member who is in that category, but we do have 5 members in field training that are moving through the field training program quite well right now. So we're anticipating in the next month or so having at least 1 or 2 joining, filling an actual open patrol position, which will certainly help the call taking. Any questions on that document?
So I saw that there's a new academy that maybe Fox Valley Technical College is opening up, I think. Is that, I assume that'll make it easier to get people through the academy more quickly and then onto the field training?
It's certainly another option. We do like to have as many of our candidates come through the Madison area academy, but we've gone to Fox Valley. We have utilized Black Hawk in Janesville. It's sometimes hard to find positions and reserve spots with all the other competition with other departments out there. Anyone that we were to bring on now that doesn't have prior law enforcement experience, we're looking at a January academy start date, which would be most likely here in the Madison area.
And I think were there recent interviews in the last week or 2, did I hear, were going on?
Yes, we had interviews yesterday. We'll report more on that when we get into the closed session, but we continue to hold routine recruitment and interview processes within the police department. I'm not sure exactly what number this one is for the year, but we did have some some good applicants that came through.
Great. Any other questions on the staffing report? Okay.
I can move back into the overtime report, which is the next section of this. Pretty typical of what we've seen the last few months as far as the number of hours of overtime being accrued by our staff members. Looking at about 2/3 of that is related directly to just purely covering the shift, meaning having the number of officers required to take calls according to our minimum staffing numbers on any given day. Compared to last year, when we had 9 vacancies in the department, we're down to 3. So when you look at those numbers and you compare the overtime hours, which is actually higher than it was the same time last year, the reason for that comes down to the unfilled positions. So we're filling our vacancies, but there's quite a time delay to get someone through the academy and trained up before they can start going out on their own and covering some of those open shifts. So we're trending in the right direction. We're still holding here at about 2/3 strength on police officers that have covered those shifts. But again, as we have 5 in field training right now, poised within the next 1 to 3 months to get off of training and fill some of those voids, we hope to see a lot of these numbers come down. The shift coverage numbers come down, and those be attributed more to things like department meetings, courts, extensions of shift for investigations, and not solely shift coverage. So we're trending in the right direction. It just takes time.
Any questions or comments on the overtime report? All right.
I think it was last month that we introduced the monthly updates to the packet here. You have our monthly update from July, which was large hand on this has been our police intern, who has actually now been hired on as a police officer and is currently in the academy, which is very helpful. She's done a great job. These are some of the calls for service that were highlighted from July that were somewhat notable for all the districts that were mentioned.
So one thing I noticed here, and this is wonderfully helpful, so thank the staff and thank you for presenting it. Last month there were 5 or so notable events. This month there are similarly 4 or 5. There's a lot of obstructing. I mean, there was an officer who was pinned to the ground and then backup arrived. And you hate to think about what could have happened had backup not been there and available. I mean, almost a lot of these just involve obstructing. And there was one where a person was pulled over for a traffic stop and just jumped out of the car and started obstructing. Have you noticed in a trend toward more obstruction in the last years, would you say?
I'll answer that question not in terms of any sort of number that I've analyzed prior to coming to this meeting, but I will say in the last couple of months of assessing some of our calls, we have seen, or I feel we have had an increase in some of those similar calls where they've had individuals who are obstructing in one way or another. Obstructing occurs pretty regularly, but there's different forms, whether it be just not telling the truth, not communicating with us in general when you're required to, but it's the physical resisting that we've seen go up a little bit more, whether that's flight from an officer or physically resisting. Those in the last couple of months have been a little bit more highlighted in our reports. We do have a few of those have resulted in charges for battery or threats to law enforcement officer, which we don't typically see a lot of. And thankfully, none of our officers have been seriously hurt. Some have had to be checked out by EMS or go to the hospital to be evaluated for a couple of minor injuries, but nothing serious.
And then I was trying to track, and there aren't names in here, which is probably appropriate, but I was trying to figure out if these have been moved through the court system from last month's report. Roughly what % of charges you recommend to the district attorney are pushed through to actual charges made in court?
So I don't have any statistical figure for you. We do have our court liaison officer tracks most of all of those cases. Anything that we send to the district attorney's office, we get feedback and follow up on, and she does track what gets charged out when things get amended in court. So that would be a number we could certainly look into. It also depends on the type of case. Sometimes we don't have a discretion in an arrest or a charge, and by state law, we're required to refer charges to the district attorney's office, and a lot of those primarily for domestic abuse investigations, may be amended or dropped entirely at the prosecutor's discretion, but we're required to make those arrests. So it's hard to, if we did have any sort of number, attribute to what is due to just prosecutorial discretion or what could get amended down, particularly with any sort of category of crime.
So the court liaison might be able, if, to identify who has been charged in court for each of these ones that's highlighted in these reports?
I believe we do track what happens to every case, yes.
Okay. All right, other questions about the monthly update? All right. Thank you. And then I think that brings us to item 5B of the agenda, the police intern promotional process.
Yes, so we did have, as part of our interviews yesterday for police officer candidates, we also held our first paid internship opportunity with several applicants that came through for that. We have more information to share about that when we get in the closed session, but for this item, one thing we'd like to ask the council or the commission here is being able to treat a paid police intern as a lateral in regards to the hiring process. So if we have an intern that is working with us and they wish to apply as a police officer, that they would start as a lateral, meaning they wouldn't have to go through that first brand new applicant interview, where they would come straight to the command staff panel interview with a community member and be interviewed. And the reason for that is because we typically have a panel for new applicants to be vetted out through a department member, someone from another department, and a community member before they move on to the command staff interview. Well, in this case, when we have an intern working with us, we get to know a lot about them. We get a pretty good idea, a lot more than we could ever get from an interview process, the traits and characteristics and the fit for our department that this person will afford. So if there's an opening and they wish to apply to a police officer position, a vacancy that we have, we would like them to be able to apply as a lateral officer, simply meaning they come straight to a command staff interview to be assessed for that position.
Any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, sure, Captain. I can't think of any, but what's the obvious trade-offs? I mean, so I get kind of the pro for going this route and eliminating that the first line of interviews, but what should, in your honest opinion, is there anything we should be concerned about by eliminating those first interviews?
Concerned? No. I see pros here in efficiency with the hiring process. It's a very competitive market, and we alluded to the fact that getting positions at law enforcement academies is also competitive, and there's a timeline to getting things done. Once you provide a conditional opportunity of employment, we have several things we have to go through yet before we can fully enlist them in the academy. The other pro is we've experienced now in the past year with a couple of interns getting to know them and knowing when someone's going to be likely a good fit here and when someone maybe isn't going to be a good fit here. We've actually seen both now, and that internship process has provided us that light. I can't think of a 15 to 30-minute interview, what we would learn about that candidate more so than we would as a stranger to our department, more than working with them for several months and getting to see their work product with us very intimately. So I would agree with those that have had the conversations about this, that having that first interview would not provide much additional insight into that candidate to become a police officer. It may as well start right with the command staff.
Other thoughts or questions?
Are we taking action on this item tonight? Is that the intention?
I think that is.
Okay.
And before, well, one other question, if you don't mind, Captain. This is something that you recommend, it looks like, and then would you say Chief Morales also recommends this?
This would be primarily the chief's recommendation. Okay. Obviously, as someone who attends those command staff interviews, I fully support what has been discussed between him and Sarah Olson with HR.
I have a question. How long is the person a police intern before they move on to a police officer? Like, what is, I don't know, are they an intern for 3 months and then you guys move
so
on?
we haven't had many interns as of late, but usually what we've had prior to the paid intern here is like a summer in length, so 2 to 3 months. You have someone in between college courses is typically who signs up to be an intern. They get college credit for participating for about 2 to 3 months. With this new paid internship opportunity, we're seeing more that are going to be at any time of the year when we have a vacancy. I don't know of any timeline where we say you need to be an intern for X amount of days, weeks, or months before you can apply to the position. But most likely, if they're going to be applying as a police officer to move on to the command staff interview, would be comfortable knowing them, even if it was for a shorter amount of time than we ever could find out about the individual in a 30-minute panel interview, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Captain, and the Chief certainly, and I support this move. I think it does speak to the efficiencies of the process and the timeline, as you mentioned, and certainly not thinking we're going to learn a whole lot more by making them sit through a 30-minute interview. So in that light, I will move that we approve the requested change to our intern process and treat them as laterals for the purposes of interviewing for officer positions.
Okay. Any discussion?
I wouldn't move forward. I would not. You said it's 30 minutes. I feel that an intern should go through the same process as if someone was applying for the position.
So if I could comment on that, I fully understand 30 minutes isn't a lot of time. It's not just the 30 minutes, it's the timing between establishing an interview panel and then moving on, sometimes a couple weeks later until we get to the command staff interview. It's that time delay that we're hoping to chisel out. Not necessarily that we wouldn't entertain 30 more minutes to have someone else listen to them, but it's the timing of the entire application process that we'd be trying to increase the efficiencies on.
So would you guys not look at other applicants because you're considering the intern?
So the way we have it worked with Human Resources, a lateral police officer, if they were to apply today, and what we're asking for in the police intern promotional process is to be treated very similar to someone who has prior law enforcement experience. If they were to apply today, they would come straight to a command staff interview, and to save some of that time from having to wait until you have enough applicants to do a routine process before the command staff interview.
Question. Would you say your interview process for a police intern would already be similar to a first panel interview if they had not been an intern?
Yes, the panel interview that we had the other day with them was directly with the command staff, and asked more broad questions to them. They're typically younger and don't have the experience of coming in as a new officer, which is the purpose of the internship program. But the command staff interview that they would get is very similar, if not the same, as what a lateral officer would be going through. They would get the same questions.
The structure of an intern, would that process that they're going through in that structure cover some of that information or experience you would have wanted someone to come in with that would put them at a spot that panel interview you would have kind of already known or incorporated?
I think you understand the question being that the experience that we see, would that cover the questions that we would typically get answers to in the first interview that we're looking to bypass in a sense here? And I would say yes. The questions that are asked in that interview are to get to know the person, to get to know what their interest level is, and not just law enforcement, but our department, so that we are finding someone who would be a good cultural fit and committed long-term to our agency. And, there's no better way to do it than to actually work with them in person for, several weeks or months to get that information vetted out.
Other thoughts or comments or discussion?
I guess the last question is, you're only trying to treat the interns as lateral, police interns as lateral, not other candidates. If you're a new candidate, you was an intern, you do the normal process. This is just for those that you've already met and went through an intern process.
Correct. It's simply to expedite the application review process to potentially find someone who would be a good fit to fill a vacancy.
Other thoughts or questions or discussion? Okay, so the motion that's been seconded that's on the floor is to approve the chief's recommendation that we forego the first interview panel for a police officer intern and move them to the command staff interview stage. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. That motion passes. Just a comment, and I've said this a couple times in the past, and it's wonderful that we don't all agree all the time. And there was a big decision we had as a commission 4 years ago, whenever Chief Morales started, where we didn't all agree. And that's healthy and good. And I think it's important to remember as commissioners and generally that we can always respectfully not agree on a final action. And that's important to the healthy role that we play as a commission. So thank you for the questions and for the votes. All right, let's move to agenda item 6C, which is a closed session. And I'll move that pursuant to section 1985 sub 1 sub C, Wisconsin statutes, the commission move into closed session for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically to make hiring recommendations for police officer.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Okay, we will enter into closed session. All right, we are back from closed session and moving to agenda item 6D. Are there any actions to be taken out of closed session?
So I will move that we accept the chief's recommendation to offer two individuals the opportunity to, I'm sorry, I'll restate that. I move that we accept the chief's recommendation to make hiring recommendations for two police officer positions and offer conditional offers to two candidates. Should I restate that again?
That works.
Jesus Christ.
That works.
I messed up.
I was second then.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Banks. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to make a conditional offer of employment to two individuals for a police officer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Any other items out of closed session? Okay. All right, well, we'll move to agenda item 7A, the staffing report from the fire department. Welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to step in on Chief Grossen's behalf. I'll do my level best. Our staffing as of July 31st, we have an authorized headcount of 85 personnel. At this time, we have currently with us 54 personnel, which leaves us somewhere in the range of 31 short of our authorized headcount. We do have a leave of absence. Firefighter Stewart has been on a leave of absence, and Chief Grossen has accepted Firefighter Hillenbrand's request to go on a short-term leave of absence at this time. As part of our personnel, we will be bringing forward a recommendation to open a second-year intern process, which we'll discuss here shortly. For recruitment, full-time firefighter recruitment, we have an eligibility list, and we'll be bringing forward a recommendation a little bit later. Lieutenant promotional process was just completed. We have a chief's recommendation on that as well. And as far as POX or paid on call, paid on premise firefighters, we don't have any new updates for those. Recently, we did promote Lieutenant David Zulke to battalion chief. He's started in that position and seems to be filling that position very well. Chief Kunze, Rob Kunze, was reclassified to a battalion chief. He's also acting in that role, and both of those roles appear to be functioning just exactly as we had hoped they would. Overtime for the month of July, looks like we had a total of hours of 442 overtime hours. Mandates in the month of July, we had 6 for a total hours of 96 in July, bringing our grand total for the year of 126 hours of mandated, with a total of 9 times we've had to do that. I do have a list of mandates for the month. Generally, they were 10 or 14-hour shifts. We did have 2 24-hour shifts, both of those, one for a firefighter, one for a driver-operator. In terms of call volume for and other information, hopefully you guys were able to look through the packet and see these things. 134 emergency medical assist calls for the month. Still alarms were at 88. We had 2 motor vehicle accidents and 1 structure fire. Grand total of 253 calls this month, which is up from last year where we were at 222. Total calls for the year, we're currently at 1,679 calls, which is again up from previous year where we had 1,438 calls at this time. Right now our average time from page to scene is approximately 5 minutes, 59 seconds. I think I covered the staffing, and in July we completed 27 fire inspections. Generally those are re-inspections of inspections that were completed in prior months. 4 public education events, and a total number of training hours at 495.
All right, any questions about the fire staffing report? Okay, thank you. Well, let's move to agenda item 7B, authorization to begin a second-year fire science resident intern recruitment.
So the fire department is looking to fill a spot for a second-year intern. That vacancy was created because one of our interns sort of rose to the top during the firefighter process and created an opening. So we're just sort of filling in that position. We'd like to continue to do that. The intern program has really proven to be an awesome introduction to the fire service for these younger kids, and a means for us to try and retain them once we've spent a considerable amount of time working with them.
All right, questions about the recommendation? I think we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting. We didn't vote on it, but had some discussion if I recall.
So if I'm clear, it's a pretty typical process. We had a vacancy, now we're starting a new process to fill that vacancy.
That's correct.
It's not a new, we always have a second-year fire science resident intern.
Yep.
Already.
So we're not asking to add additional interns. We're asking to fill a vacancy within the current intern program.
Any other questions? Okay. I'll move to accept the chief's recommendation to begin a second-year fire science resident intern recruitment process.
I second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Okay. Thank you. And now let's move to agenda item 7C. Does anyone want to take us into closed session?
Pursuant to section 19.851C Wisconsin statute, the commission will move into closed session for the purposes of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. More specifically, to make a hiring recommendation for the fire lieutenant position, establish an eligibility list for fire lieutenant, make a hiring recommendation for career firefighter, and request to approve a leave of absence for one POX firefighter.
Any second?
I second that.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, we are in closed session. We are returning from closed session and we'll move to agenda item 7D. Any action out of closed session?
So I'll move that we accept the chief's recommendation to extend an offer of employment to one individual for the position of fire lieutenant.
Second.
Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Other action coming out of closed session? I'll move to approve a leave of absence for one POX firefighter.
I second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I'll move that we accept the hiring recommendation for career firefighter. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Any other action coming out of closed session? So we talked about, on our agenda, is establishing an eligibility list for fire lieutenant. I think what I'd like to do, or what I would recommend, is we wait until next month when our wonderful staff support and Sarah is here to help us through that process.
Second.
And I don't even know if it was a motion, more just a comment. More comment from me, but if you want any other motions that anyone has coming out of closed session?
No.
All right. Okay. Well, then let's move to agenda item number 8, announcements. Anything from police or fire? We already heard about the great community night out event with police. There were a bunch of things in the fire report, the different community events that fire was a part of, and police was also part of a Latino Academy, I believe, process. So thank both services for all the work you do in the community outreach. All right. Any last thoughts?
We heard from the mayor and others, community members, thanking the police department and everybody involved in Community Night Out, but this body should probably say thank you as well. So I'll go on the record for us and say thank you to the police department and everybody involved in putting on an absolutely wonderful community event. So thank you. And especially...
I agree. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right. Then why don't we move to agenda item number 9?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. We are adjourned. Thank you.